just killed 2 American soldiers, 2 of our guys, dead in Jordan. And I want to know, where is the outrage? Iran, the regime that chants death to America like it's a morning prayer, the regime that funds every terrorist outfit from Beirut to Baghdad, the regime that our previous administration handed $100 billion to, essentially, and then told us to calm down about it. That regime just killed 2 United States service members in Jordan, with a third still missing. Still missing, folks, as we sit here today. And the drive-by media is busy covering World Cup deals at Chipotle. Now, I want you to hold that thought. We are going to get into all of it. Iran, the missing soldier, what the response needs to look like, what it probably will look like, and whether the foreign policy establishment is going to do what the foreign policy establishment always does, which is nothing dressed up in strongly worded language. We have also got the new mayor of New York City. And I use the word mayor loosely because this man is something else entirely, discussing whether he can arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, the sitting prime minister of our closest ally in the Middle East, in New York City. I'm not making this up. I could not make this up. I don't have that kind of imagination, folks. And Paul Pelosi has been charged with hit and run. The man has the driving record of a blindfolded contestant on a carnival ride, and now it has finally caught up with him. My friends, we have a full program for you today. I'm Rick LeBow. This is Rush Hour, and we are just getting started. 2 American service members are dead. Let me just say that again so it lands the way it should. 2 Americans in uniform serving this country are dead, killed by an Iranian strike on U.S. forces in Jordan. A third is missing. 4 others were medically evacuated, and U.S. Central Command confirmed it. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation from some anonymous source in a trench coat. This happened. Now, let's talk about Iran for a moment, because I think a lot of people, and I mean this charitably, have a kind of fuzzy understanding of what Iran actually is and what Iran actually does. Iran is not a difficult regional actor that just needs the right diplomatic framework to come around. Iran is not a misunderstood theocracy that responds to carrots. Iran is a revolutionary death cult that has been at war with the United States since 1979, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. And for decades, we have chosen not to acknowledge it. The Iranians blew up our Marines in Beirut in 1983. They armed the insurgents who killed our soldiers in Iraq with those copper-tipped roadside bombs. They fund Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the whole murderous alphabet. They chant death to America. Their parliament chants it. Their military brass chants it. Their president chants it. At some point, don't you think we ought to take these people at their word? Now, I want to walk you through something because this is important, and I think the context matters enormously. Under the previous administration, Barry Obama's administration, we handed Iran something like $150 billion in sanctions relief as part of the nuclear deal. $150 billion. You know what Iran did with that money? They did not, in fact, build schools and hospitals. They did not invest in their crumbling economy. They funded proxy wars. They funded the very militias that now shoot at American soldiers in Jordan. It is almost too depressing to say out loud. And then there was the period right before Trump came back, the Biden years, where we were, quote, in indirect talks with Iran constantly. Always one more round of diplomacy away from a breakthrough. Always another Swiss intermediary carrying messages. Meanwhile, the Houthis were shooting at our ships in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, Iranian proxies were hitting American bases in Syria and Iraq over 100 times. 100 times, folks! And our response was, essentially, we'd bomb an empty warehouse at 2 in the morning and then issue a statement, strongly worded, with a lot of adverbs. The Iranians watched all of that and drew the obvious conclusion. There is no cost. There's no cost. So they kept going. Now we are here. 2 dead Americans, 1 missing. And the question, the real question, is what happens next, because this is a test. Not for Iran. Iran already knows what it is and what it wants. This is a test for us, for the administration, for the American will to actually be what we say we are, which is a nation that does not tolerate the murder of its soldiers. You know, there's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in foreign policy circles: proportional response. I want to talk about that phrase for a second, because I think it is one of the most intellectually dishonest phrases in the entire foreign policy vocabulary. Proportional response. What does that mean? It means we hit them back roughly as hard as they hit us. No harder, because we want to seem measured and reasonable and responsible to the Europeans. My friends, let me tell you something. You do not win a war. You do not even deter an enemy by being proportional. Proportionality is a strategy for people who want to feel morally comfortable while losing. You deter an enemy by making the cost of attacking you so catastrophically high that they stop. That's it. That is the entire theory of deterrence. And Iran has spent 40+ years figuring out that we lack the stomach for it. Every time they hit us and we respond with half measures and press releases, they bank it, they remember, they file it away, and then they hit us again. Now, I'm not here calling for World War III. I want to be very clear about that. I am not suggesting we start carpet bombing Tehran. What I am saying is that there must be a cost, a real, visible, material cost imposed on the Iranian regime, on its military leadership, on the infrastructure that supports these attacks, such that the calculation changes. The mullahs understand one language: power. Real power, credibly applied. Trump understands this, at least instinctively. He took out Qasem Soleimani back in 2020, and the left told us World War III was beginning imminently. They were aghast. We were all going to die. The region would explode. And then Iran blustered, shot some missiles at an empty airbase, and went quiet for a while. Because the message landed. That's deterrence. That's what a real response looks like. The question now is whether the people in the room making these decisions have the nerve to do something that matters. I genuinely do not know the answer to that. I hope they do. 2 American families are burying their sons or daughters right now. We don't have the names yet as of this recording, and a 3rd family is sitting by the phone not knowing if their kid is alive. That demands more than a press conference. I also want to touch briefly on the fact that this story about Iran killing American soldiers, is not the top story across most of the mainstream press today. You want to know what is? Various stories about the World Cup final, and I love soccer as much as the next American, which is to say, moderately and only when we're winning. But 2 dead soldiers and the drive-by media is doing wall-to-wall coverage of which celebrity is sitting in which luxury box in New Jersey. The media in this country is a national embarrassment. That is not a new observation. It remains true. The all-knowing, all-sensing, all-seeing Maha Ricky is watching all of this. And I will tell you this: if the administration responds with force, with clarity, with a message that Iran cannot misread, they will be right, and I'll say so. If they do the empty warehouse at 2 a.m. thing again, I'll say that too. We'll see. Don't doubt me. 2 Americans dead, 1 missing. Iran did it. There must be a reckoning. All All right, folks, let's get to the roundup. We've got some gems today, 24-karat American absurdity straight from the headlines to your ears. First up, New York City. Now, New York City elected itself a new mayor. His name is Zohran Mamdani, and I want you to understand who this man is, because the drive-by media is going to spend the next several years telling you he's just a pragmatic progressive with fresh ideas, and I want to inoculate you against that narrative right now. Zohran Mamdani is a democratic socialist. He says so himself, proudly, enthusiastically, like a man who has never read a history book past 1935. He's been running around saying that his democratic socialism is basically the New Deal, just FDR with a Brooklyn accent, and that Wall Street has nothing to fear from him. Wall Street has nothing to fear. He says this out loud. But here's the part I really want you to hear. Mamdani has announced that his administration is exploring whether New York City can arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, if Netanyahu comes to New York for the United Nations General Assembly, based on the International Criminal Court warrant. Now, let me sit with this for a moment. The mayor of New York City, a man who has been in office for, a few weeks, is talking about arresting the leader of America's closest ally in the Middle East, the leader of the only functioning democracy in a neighborhood of theocracies and failed states, a man who is, at this very moment, fighting a war against the people who massacred Israeli civilians on October 7th. That man. Mamdani wants to arrest that man, based on an ICC warrant, the International Criminal Court, an institution the United States is not even a member of. We don't recognize its jurisdiction. It has the legal authority over American soil of a strongly worded postcard from The Hague. Well, we're exploring whether we have the legal authority. You don't. You don't have it, and you know you don't have it. This is not a legal question. It's a performance. It's pandering to the hardest left, most anti-Israel slice of the Democratic coalition in New York. And Mamdani is doing it because that's who put him in office, and he knows it. Meanwhile, this same administration has made a cash for syringes program permanent in New York City. They are paying drug addicts cash money for turning in used needles, cash to junkies, because apparently the theory is that if you give a heroin addict $20, he'll buy a sandwich. He will not buy a sandwich. All this does is give people more reason to use more drugs, generate more needles, and collect more cash. It is a subsidy for self-destruction, dressed up in public health language. So to review, the mayor of New York City will not arrest fentanyl dealers, but he will arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. Cash for needles, but no accountability for the cartels supplying them. Governing by bumper sticker, folks. That's what we've got. Next up, Paul Pelosi. Paul Pelosi, husband of the legendary Bella Pelosi herself, has been charged with hit and run following an incident in San Francisco. He faces up to 6 months in jail if convicted. Now, this is not the first time Mr. Pelosi has had automotive difficulties, as you may recall. The man has the driving record of a demolition derby contestant who keeps registering under a fake name. 6 months in jail for a hit and run in San Francisco, where, I should note, the city has spent years telling us that prosecuting people for property crimes is basically racism. They literally had a DA who refused to prosecute shoplifters and car break-ins because he thought the criminal justice system was fundamentally unjust. And now Paul Pelosi may do 6 months for a hit and run. I am not saying he shouldn't face consequences. He should. Absolutely. Everyone should be equal before the law. But that is the point, isn't it? Equal before the law. something the left has systematically dismantled in cities they control, until it's one of their own on the other end of it. Then suddenly the law matters. Then suddenly consequences are appropriate. Funny how that works. And finally, because I cannot let this pass without comment, quick word on ICE. Specifically, the story about ICE officers saying the agency is not living up to expectations. Now, there are officers on the ground saying operations have been hampered, bogged down in bureaucracy, impeded by local sanctuary policies. Worth watching. But here's what I want to say. ICE is doing the job that every sovereign nation on earth considers basic and obvious, enforcing its borders and removing people who are here illegally, some of whom have very serious criminal records. The hysteria the left has worked up over this. You would think ICE was rounding up innocent civilians. They're not. And any complications in the operations are, in large part, the result of Democrat mayors and governors doing everything in their power to obstruct federal law enforcement. The same mayors who want to arrest Netanyahu are busy shielding illegal aliens with criminal records from deportation. I want you to hold that irony close to your heart. All right, my friends, that's the program for today. 2 dead Americans and 1 missing in Jordan. Iran did it, and the world is watching to see what we do about it. If you take nothing else from this hour, take that. Follow this story. It matters more than almost anything else happening right now. We talked today about Iran. We talked about the new socialist mayor of New York City who wants to arrest American allies and pay drug addicts for their syringes. We talked about Paul Pelosi's ever-eventful relationship with motor vehicles. Full day. It's always a full day in this country. But underneath all of it, I'll leave you with this. There is a portion of this country's leadership class, in politics, in media, in academia, that has lost the thread entirely. Lost the basic plot of what America is, what it's for, who it belongs to, and what we owe to the people who wear the uniform and defend it. The people who make this country work know what it means when soldiers die and the news anchors move on to soccer scores. They feel it. That's you, folks. You feel it. You always have, and that's why you're here. The government cannot give you anything it hasn't first taken from someone else. No nation has ever taxed itself into prosperity, and no country has ever remained great by pretending its enemies aren't enemies. Those aren't partisan talking points. Those are facts, simple ones, available to anyone willing to look. I'm Rick LeBow. This has been Rush Hour. Same time tomorrow if they let us back on.